Okay, so I am sharing something. Great. Excellent. Perfect. All right, here we go.
There we go.
All right, now, so as Lydia mentioned, I am the IT coordinator here at the Northern New York Library Network. I am also the project lead for the New York State Historic Newspapers. I've been doing this about 10 years. I joined the network back in 2013, and we launched the New York State Historic Newspapers the very next year. So we previously ran an older version of the website. It was just Northern New York ahead of that. But in 2014, we decided to move to a statewide project. And what you've been using all this time has been the result of that project. The question that people are asking is, why migrate? Why move? Why change something that is so loved by so many people? And we've got a lot of great reasons for it. Why fix when it ain't broke? Well, actually, there's a lot that's broke. First of all, I mean, the site looks like it launched in 2014. The last of the theme changes I made was actually back in 2014. And so it looks dated. It needs an update, and that's true. The next part of that, though, is that the web, the world, the internet has changed significantly since 2014. Right now, it's generally considered good practice that when you build a website, you build it mobile first. So the idea that someone could look at it using a cell phone and have a good experience with your website. That's way different than it was back in 2014. In 2014, less than 50% of adults in the United States owned a cell phone at all. So it was one of those things where we didn't think about mobile responsiveness back in 2014. And so the site now needs to be mobile responsive. Part of the reason for that, it's not because I think that you guys are all going to immediately drop your laptops on the ground, smash them, and immediately start using cell phones. It's what basically search engines have come to expect as far as using the site. Search engines have started deranking, delisting us because we're not mobile responsive, meaning that the site can't be used on phones. And, you know, as much as I hate to admit it, I do kind of care what Google thinks about us, at least from that standpoint. The other thing, too, is that we have been having technical problems adding new material to the site for about a year now. Part of that is just because of the size of the site. The software is called Cronam, and it uses components called Solar and MySQL. And all three of these components are designed to work at a certain scale. And we set them up that way, figuring, at the time that we launched this website, we only had about 2 million pages available to us. And we figured, maybe we'll do another 2 or 3 million pages. It'll be fine. Well, that's great. But the way we configured it and the way we set it up, it became untenable to continue to add new material at 11.7 million pages and no end in sight. We still digitize between 1 million and 1.5 million new pages of material every year. So we basically outscaled what it was possible to do with the way we set it up. And lastly, you may not know this, but the servers, the storage arrays, the switches, all of the stuff that run this website are literally 10 feet from me, one room down the hall here in Potsdam, New York. We run all of the servers here in-house. And that's great, but that also means that we have to periodically replace equipment and update equipment and that type of thing. All of the equipment involved with the original project we've now run since 2014 and are due to be replaced, due to be updated, due to be changed. And so we kind of reached a point where we have all these problems. It's time for us to look to see what is next for the project. Where do we go from here? And so back in last fall, we started looking at other ways to host the website. One way that we looked at was literally just changing out the equipment, changing how we run the software, updating Solar and MySQL in such a way that it could handle a lot more visitors, a lot more speed, be quicker, be more responsive. Look at changing all of that stuff. And we decided that that's a lot of work, and it's true, it's a lot of work. But one of the things that we wanted to be able to do is to add new features, not just replicate what we'd already done, except faster. So we started looking around, and we found several companies that offer this type of work. And we settled on one that we clearly thought was the victor, clearly had everything that we were looking for. And so we've settled on Veridian software. Veridian is an expert in newspaper collections. In fact, this is all this company does. They do it for national and state and public libraries and historical associations all over the world. There are large newspaper archives all over the world that trust Veridian. And we were immediately taken with who they were working with, what their capabilities were, and it was amazing. The other part is their software had absolutely everything that our current site has as far as features go. Plus, there were a lot of new features, and we're going to look at some of them today, that we always wanted to be able to have, that we wanted to be able to share with you guys, that we wanted users to be involved in. And lastly, one of the big deals with them is that they are experts in cloud services. Right now, we run it all here on servers in-house, but we wanted to be able to move to an environment that's scalable. So that way, when we get to 13 or 15 or 18 million pages, it would behave and run every bit as fast as it does now. And so that was cloud, and Veridian has the expertise in cloud services. So we were really excited to be able to partner with them, and we're really happy about where this is going, and I hope you will be too. So we started transferring materials back in March. In case you're wondering, from March till July is how long it takes to transfer 11.7 million PDFs, plus all the metadata involved in that. And right now, we're still, as of right now, transferring backlog material. So this is all the stuff that we wanted to post to the website as long ago as a year ago, so last August, and we're getting it up. So it's all going to be there right away. So this is the process that we're at the moment. So the question you're asking, hey, Chuck, so what? When is this going to happen? Next week. So if all goes well, we'll be launching this site to the general public next week. If something goes horribly wrong or there's a delay in any way, it's going to be the week following, but soon. So you're going to get a chance to play with this. And in fact, let's swap over and look at it right now. So here's the new site. So some first things you'll probably notice right away, it's a little more colorful than the previous site was. We always had our color scheme as kind of the old kids joke, you know, what's black and white and red all over? Oh yeah, newspapers. Well, we've decided to expand the color palette a little bit more than just gray and red. We now have our multicolored state across there. Something else I want to note right away about the layout on this site is I'm going to point out we right now have 12.8 million pages on the new site. So we are already 1 million and a little bit more pages than we had on the old site on the new one. So this is the result of our backlog. All of the new material that we've wanted to add since last August is here now. So you'll notice that it looks pretty much pretty similar to what you're familiar with. And one of the really interesting things, and I was talking about mobile responsiveness, and I'll be interested to see how this works for you guys that are viewing at home. You'll notice that as we resize, the site changes. So that way, if you're all the way down, so you're looking at it like you're on a cell phone, you've got the same site and the same usability involved. So pretty neat. There's our mobile responsiveness. So we're going to go all the way back out to our main page. So let's talk about some of the features, because I know what you're dying to ask is, but Chuck, how does it search? Because that's what I do with it, right? So I'm going to go ahead and start launching a search right from here. I'm going to type, because I'm an egomaniac, in case you haven't attended any of our previous webinars. You know I have a tendency to search for myself. So here we are at the search results. Now, this may not be the way it looks when you first go to it. It may look like this. This is this little symbol over here is the advanced search. Okay, this provides some of the same search options. I'm going to pull it out of the way for just a moment, so that way we can look at what just comes up when you type your first search in there. You'll notice that I started by typing in my own name, but I took the capitals out of it. The reason for it is that this site will not care about capitalization whatsoever. And that does that as far as what you enter into the blank and the results that it gets. So if it's a case of a Henry and it's got a lowercase h, you'll still get it as part of those results. So this is a set of results that I received for searching for Chuck Henry. That means every page that's on this set of results here has Chuck and Henry involved in it. So that way that's what shows. But there's some new things to note about what's here. Now, first of all, on the old site, you used to get a thumbnail, and the thumbnail used to have little highlights on it, which is fine. This one, you're not going to get that same thumbnail. Instead, you get a textual representation of the content of the page. So this is literally the optical character recognition for that page that matches your result. So in this case, it's Henry, and I bet you somewhere on that page is also Chuck, but it highlights Henry to begin with. But on the left-hand side, you'll notice that we get some new faceting, and this is where it gets really interesting. The first thing here is this little timeline where you can actually like hover over and see where most of the results are. Like for instance, for Chuck Henry, we start to see a spike after 1932, and then we see a lot more through the 1950s into the 1970s, and then it begins to decrease after we get beyond the 1980s. That's kind of interesting. This is a cool view that we didn't have previously, and it's a cool way to look at it. But you'll also notice that we have down here a decade faceting component. So we can actually look at specific decades and reduce our results considerably. All right, since I was born in the 70s, I'm going to go down here to this 1970 category, and you'll see that we've 11,000 results inside of that. So we can actually separate it down further by decade. If you're looking for something and you're not for someone in particular, and you're not 100% sure what time range that might be best, if you don't have an exact date, your decade does a great job of getting closer. Like for instance, I'm going to go ahead and click into 1970 to 1979. And it redoes those results. So now we've reduced the number of results, and now we still have more faceting. So now I can go down even deeper into a particular year if I want to continue to facet that way. Other facets that are available on here is the publication. So this is where that particular thing is located. So there's a lot of results for the journal for Chuck Henry and also for Press Republican. Again, very interesting way to be able to narrow it down by focusing on a particular newspaper. I think a lot of people will be pleased by this next one. We've got county, so you can actually limit it into a particular county and get results for a county in a particular decade. So these are all great facets that let us get a little closer to what we're looking at. And if we keep going down, there's even more facets. Okay, city and which collection. We'll talk about collections a little bit later. So say, for instance, I want to clear out this collection, this facet that I've already chosen. There's a little X next to this. I can clear the decade out, and we're back to the total. So let's go ahead and look at this advanced set now. This is pretty similar. If you were a longtime user of our previous site, you're familiar with this. This is the limit by date. So that way you can actually say, okay, I want to look at specifically from January 1st, and let's pick, say, 1970. Oh, there we go, 1970. I said 19, there we go. It took it a second for it to do it. Now we have some date, and we can actually go up here to the search icon. And now it is actually now limited the results to anything greater than 1970. And so I have a specific date range. Now, I know a lot of folks do that, especially if you're looking for a person and they were alive between a particular time period, or you have a death date or a birth date between a particular time period. You can do that same date range set here. Searching by title, limit the search by title. Again, it's something that we always were able to do on the old site. Searching by county and by city, same as previously. We used to be able to do this on the old site. But what I wanted to call attention to is this little setting here, the search summaries. So what this search summary refers to is this little tidbit beneath the result, okay? This, if you say none, will actually make that little bit disappear so you get a very short list. This is already set to text and it defaults to that, but you can also set it to images and then rerun your search. And then instead what you'll get in a moment when it loads, so you'll actually get the little clip of the newspaper where that text appears. So you can get a little better view as to whether or not this might be something that you're interested in looking at closer. So let me, I'm going to go ahead and clear this search. And I think this is an important note for all of you that are big users. If you want to clear a search, clean it all the way back to basics. You go all the way up to the logo at the top of the page and click on it, and it will clear your previous search out of the way. So I'm going to go click on search here. I'm going to go back to typing in Chuck Henry again. But what I want to highlight here is some of our advanced features or advanced search techniques. On the old site, we were very limited. It was not a pure boolean site. The idea was that you could type in your search, and then there was a drop down under it, and you could change it to within 5, within 10, and or all of that stuff. So you could boolean sort of, but this is a literal return to the old school boolean. So one of the features of that is if you're looking for an exact text, you just put it in quotes, in which case then you'll get an exact text quote. The other thing too is that you can use boolean phrases. Like if you're looking for Erie Canal stuff, you can say Erie Canal, in which case you've got those two items. If they appear on a page together, you can put them in quotes, but you can also boolean. And boolean operators are where you can say, absolutely every page that appears must have Erie and canal, in which case then you'll search for it and you'll get a bunch of results. But what's interesting about this is that you can actually hook them together. So I'm going to look for things that have, you know what? Yeah, sure, Erie Canal, and let's say not Suez. So not the Suez Canal, in which case then it'll limit the results a little bit from there. This is a really crappy example of that, but because, it doesn't involve Chuck or Henry, so therefore I'm not going to search for it myself. But anyway, that's how you do some of these searches. So let's try a Chuck Henry search, and let's look at a result, because that's really what you want to see. What does it look like when I zoom in on something? So for instance, this is a good example of a Chuck Henry search. This is the Press Republican from 1985, page 14. It looks like that there's a Chuck Henry. I know that this happens to be a result for me because the Philip next door is my brother. So let's go ahead and look at a page and how it loads. So this is the Press Republican from August 24th, 1985. And you'll notice that there's little yellow highlights on this page, and it centers it in the middle of our view because this is our primary result page. So I'm going to use the mouse, and I can scroll with my mouse, and let's have a look at some results. Ta-da! So, yep, I was a 4-H member, and I displayed at the local fair some holiday decorations and won some awards for it. And so here I am listed right here on the page. So that makes a certain amount of sense. You'll also notice that we have some of our usual controls off on the right-hand corner. let's look at some of these. There's zoom in and zoom out, which makes a certain amount of sense. There is also the ever popular scissors. So you can actually highlight what it is that you're looking at and say, yes, I want to look at just that bit, in which case it pulls it off to the side, in which case you can print it from here, or you can save the image from here for use in other things. I'm going to go back. Some of the other interesting options that are available here for this. Hang on, we got to wait for the page to reload.
When you're moving the cursor, can you just tell people where on the screen it is? Like it says.
Oh, is it not showing the?
Some people are just listening along, and if somebody
asks
if you just say like in a search bar.
Okay. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just using the mouse and I'm paging along what's here. Over in this search bar to the right-hand side, there are some, let's go back to the fair results, since the fair results are right here. There are some other interesting things that are here. We have the ability to zoom in close, so that way you're getting the full page width. The other symbol here is where you're seeing the full page height. One of the interesting features about this viewer is the ability to rotate the image. Despite our best efforts, there are some pages of the newspapers that are out there that are poorly rotated. We've tried to fix them. I know they're out there someplace, but you actually have the ability to rotate the page yourself by clicking on the rotate page icon, which allows you to flip the pages around so you can look at them. That's great, especially if it's election result pages where they might have printed them landscape rather than portrait view. You have the ability to see them that way. So that's really cool. The next symbol over on this is the ability to download just the image of that particular page. It will take it a moment to do, but it is actually loading now in a new window, the full-size JPEG of the page. So that way you have the full-size JPEG that you can download. Again, this is similar to what it was on the old site. On the old site, it was a PNG instead of a JPEG. But again, this gives you the ability to grab the original image if you wish. There are two more options at the bottom of this that we are going to skip over for now because they're really interesting. One is to be able to download the PDF of the page, and the other one is to add to your private list. Ooh, I wonder what that means. We'll see in a minute. Okay, so that's what looking at these pages and allowing you to zoom in and look at them look like. You can use your mouse to zoom in. You can use the controls that are available from the side. That's the way you maneuver. I think this is a much more natural way to look at the newspaper, because now you're looking at it page next to page next to page, like you would if you were looking at the newspaper directly. Very natural, very easy to follow, looks pretty great. So that's a little bit about search. I understand that I'm going through this pretty fast, but there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about today, and we're just covering it briefly. After the site is launched, you'll see some email from us that'll have some links to some more detailed videos about each of these features and some of the search tips that we've come up with this new site. So let's go back out to the home site for a moment. I'm going to clear, you notice it says Chuck Henry in quotes, it saved it. I'm going to clear my search results, so I'm looking at a clear and empty box, and then we're going to go through some of the other ways that you can look at pages on the site. On the old site, we had a titles menu, and what the titles menu would do is it would pull up a list of every title that we had on the website. However, on the old website, it would take forever to load. And the reason for that is because the old software was designed to do just a handful of titles. It was never designed to do the more than 1,000 titles that we have available in this database. And so this is a much more efficient, much faster loading way of looking at these. You'll notice across the top, we've got the alphabet. So that way we can jump to a particular letter of the alphabet and have all the titles in that by that letter. I'm going to scroll back up to the top because I'm specifically going to click on one of these titles. We're going to look at the Adirondack Daily Enterprise. This is my home paper growing up, so I always use it as an example. If I click on the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, we're now on to the landing page for the Adirondack Daily Enterprise. Now, we always had a landing page previously, but it showed the full librarian-esque MARC record for the title. That's great, but I don't think all of those fields were super relevant. So what we did is we took out of the MARC records some of the fields that we felt that people might need when doing research. The publisher is interesting, the frequency of the paper publication. And you'll also notice that we have years in publication. Now, this was always a confusing point on the old site. On the old site, it would always say Adirondack Daily Enterprise, and then in parentheses after it, 1927 to current. And people would always assume that meant that we had 1927 to current. And that's not true. That was just the years that the paper was in publication, according to the Library of Congress, who, by the way, is wrong more often than not, meaning they're not terribly accurate. They were basing it on the information they had at the time that that record was made. In the time since, more papers were found, or it was extended, or the paper decided to reprint, or what have you. So for us, years in publication just simply means when was the paper technically in publication. The line under it says available online, and then it has the date range and the number of issues. So that's literally the number of pages that we have, the number of issues that we have in this collection, which may or may not be what's in the years of publication, meaning we may have a shorter amount. In the case of the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, at the moment, we only have through 2007. That's not necessarily true. We've got more coming in the soon, but that's where you get that from. Location, Saranac Lake, Franklin County, and you notice Franklin County is highlighted because that means you can jump over and see more Franklin County newspapers. I'll skip over the OCLC, LCN numbers and the ISSN numbers. This is me moving too fast, sorry. So these are numbers that are useful if you're looking for more information about those titles, okay? Collection, and we'll talk about collection in a minute, is here as well. There's also a Chronicling America listing. So this is actually the way that you can pop open a new tab and look at the information that the Library of Congress has on this title. So if you're interested in seeing, for instance, the full MARC record, the old school MARC record, it's available through the Library of Congress that way, okay? The physical location listing is new. This is a feature we didn't have previously. If we have a record for it, this actually allows you to jump out to the New York State Library's New York State Historical Newspapers project, where they actually did an index of all the paper being held by museums, libraries, and historical associations and museums across the state. So if we don't have the full run, this is a great way for you to be able to jump out to the New York State Library and find who has the paper copies, the film copies, and the microfiche copies of the newspapers. So if we don't have it, this is where you start your search elsewhere into the real world, your physical world search, as it were. At the bottom, you'll notice that we have now a whole date range, and this is the date ranges of where we have newspapers. So there's a little bit of a mistake when you look at the Adirondack Daily Enterprise. It says we have an issue from 1895. We don't actually. It's a newspaper that they published later on, where they reprinted an older copy of a newspaper on one of the predecessor titles that eventually became the Adirondack Daily Enterprise. It was just the Enterprise in those days. And so it's an older title. So when we date named it, it ended up being date named and put there. A bulk of the title is after 1952. And so what's neat about this is you can actually look at, okay, 1952, January, you can click the link, in which case then you can look to see the same calendar view like we had previously. One of the neat things about this is that you can continue moving from month by month if you want to see what we have. And you can also go back to the full year list. From this same landing page, you have the ability to search right here inside of the Adirondack Daily Enterprise. Again, you can do it on the old site, but this is a really neat way that you can jump into a particular title and search through a particular title. So let's continue our broad pass through. We're going to go at the top and go back here. Now, dates, this is a new feature for us. This is actually a full calendar representation of everything in the collection, all of the titles, all years. So here's 1725. This represents the earliest paper issue that we have in our collection. So this is the New York Gazette from February 28th, 1725. So this is how you jump right in and you can look at that particular issue. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the year list, but you'll see that we have a lot of stuff. This is really neat because if you know approximately the date when something occurred, you can actually jump to the decade and then jump to a particular month. And then inside of the month, you'll notice it says, okay, let's say June 1985. We are looking at June 5th of 1985. It says 24 issues. So that means that we have 24 newspapers that published on this particular day. And you can call up a list of those particular days. This is really interesting. If you want to go to the date that a particular president was assassinated, you could actually call up the date and look at the newspapers that were published on that day, or the day after, or the day following. And you can get a view of what history looked like on all sorts of newspapers across New York State. This is a new feature for us. We're excited and interested to see what cool uses people come up with for this one. The next one over is counties. This is exactly what you'd expect it to be. This is a county search. I'm going to go back to the homepage for just half a second. We have this beautiful map on the front page, and this is kind of the on-ramp for the county functionality. So I'm going to click on St. Lawrence County up here, which is where I am at the moment. And you'll notice that now we've bopped from home over to counties, and St. Lawrence County is now highlighted. And you'll notice off to the side here, we have all the titles in St. Lawrence County that we have for St. Lawrence County. And there's a lot of them, okay? But if I wanted to search from here, I could just be like, okay, I want to search just Chuck Henry inside of this particular search, in which case I can, and boom, I'll get my results. But if I want to broaden the search results to other counties nearby, I can add them easily. Now, this was a feature on the old site, but it involved holding the control key down and clicking from a drop-down menu. Now you don't have to do that. Now you go over here to the county list and you select your other counties. So I'm going to go ahead and expand my search to Franklin County, and let's say Jefferson County, and maybe Clinton County. And so now my search has been expanded. You'll notice now it's all highlighted red. And the beautiful part is I can scroll down and you can see all these titles. So these are all the titles that'll now be searched as part of this search. And if I want to, I can shut off particular titles inside of this. I'm searching for Chuck and I don't think he's going to be in the North Countryman. I can shut off the North Countryman if I want. So you can do your search inside of county. So this is a great and very easy way to get to a functionality we had previously, but it was a little hidden. It was a little hard for folks to use. I'm excited about this because now it makes it super easy for people to do very targeted county searches. On the old days, I used to tell people that when you were searching for a particular person in a particular region, to focus on a search inside of county instead of searching deeper into a particular town or city, because newspapers liked to share stories between them. And I still recommend that for here. And this feature really doubles down on this idea of searching within counties for specific people or references. So that's great. I love this. This is a really neat feature. Let's go keep going on to another new feature that we have on the website. So I'm going to go to collections. One of the things that I think we've always wanted to be able to highlight, and we've always struggled to do it, is that we have a lot of partners. We have over 200 partners across the state representing academic libraries, public library systems, school libraries, historical associations, museums, and even private individuals that have contributed materials to this site. While we've done the work of putting it online, these folks have done the work of raising the money, getting the film to us, getting the film to someone to be digitized, doing the hard work that's really involved in getting the material to us. And it's always been very hard to highlight everyone's contributions. On the old website, what would happen is that you'd click on a particular newspaper page and it would show you the page. And on the page, it would say this image provided by, and that was all the recognition that an organization might receive. And while that's great, we always felt it was kind of lacking, especially our smaller organizations. A small public library might fundraise to find the money to be able to digitize their local newspaper, and it might be a huge effort for them to do so. And then we'd throw their hard work, hard-earned pages into a pool of 11 million pages. It felt like their work was just a drop in the bucket. And we always felt bad about that, and we always felt like we needed to do more. Well, beauteous part is that with this website, we can do more. Now, every partner that we have that have contributed anything to the website now gets a landing page that belongs to them. And so not only do you get to see a list of all the contributors that we have who have contributed material to the website, but you also get to experience their material directly. So I'm going to say, all right, let's go to Adirondack Experience. Now, Adirondack Experience is not what I would call one of our small contributors. They've contributed a lot of material, but if you click on the Adirondack Experience, it pulls up a landing page for them. And what happens here is you'll see the name and you'll see a link to the organization. So this is the link to their website, so they can go directly there. But you also have the ability to search only within the files contributed by that particular organization. Now, why is this awesome? If you are a library, if I know there's library folk who are on this call right now, if you are a library person and you want to highlight for your visitors of your website that you have contributed materials to the project, you can actually link to your landing page and your local visitors will be able to search through the materials that came from your contributions. And this is a big deal. We're really happy to be able to provide this now because it gives every contributor, every partner that we have a voice and a recognition for what they've contributed. So in this case, these are the titles that the Adirondack Experience have contributed to. Now, I also want to highlight too is that in the old site and in the old way of looking at things, our pages were per page, meaning that the Adirondack Experience might only contribute half of a particular run of a title, and another organization might have contributed the other half. In the old site, you'd have to look page by page in order to see whether or not the page was contributed by one person or another. Now, the way this is set up, each organization can share responsibility for the whole of a particular title. Glens Falls Messenger might only half belong to Adirondack Experience. Another half might be another organization, but both organizations get to have recognition for their contribution to the page. We're really excited about this, and we're really happy to be able to highlight the contributions of all these folks. This has been a truly statewide multi-participant project, and we are so happy and proud to have worked with all of these folks. And we're happy to finally have a way to be able to recognize everyone's contributions. So that's a big part. So far, we've gone through most of the menu options that are available here and some of the ways that you can search through it. Our About and Contribute tabs at the top are just like the ones that were on the previous sites. It gives information about the terms in use. You still have the ability to contact us if you find problems or mistakes. You still have the ability to subscribe to our newsletter. There's also a donate link if you would like to donate us, throw us a few bucks to help out. So that's where this material is. The Contribute tab contains details specifically about how to get your pages to us to include in the project. There's some updates to this that'll be coming soon in the next couple of days, but this is where you're going to find that information. The help page here is actually a help page provided by Veridian, and I encourage you when you get a chance to have a look at this because it goes through exact phrase searches. We have the boolean searches, and there's a whole bunch of really interesting other stuff that can be done. Fuzzy searching, searching within certain, kind of like we did previously, within a certain number of characters. If you've worked with our site before, you know that OCRing, the optical character recognition process, can be notoriously inaccurate. So this actually gives you, with fuzzy searching, the way to be able to look deeper into results, allowing some characters to not always be correct. Like you might be searching for Chuck, but the H in Chuck might be mangled. And so it'll be like CMUCK, in which case then you're not going to find that result. But some of these fuzzy searches will allow you to be able to do searches where you find those results. So I encourage you to look at these, and we'll be doing some videos later on where we do a little more intensive into this look at that. But the last major feature I really wanted to talk about, and this is a completely new feature to us, is over here, My Account. So on the new site, you'll be able to create an account with us. And this is a brand new feature, and it is completely optional. You do not have to create an account on the website. You can if you want. We would really like you to be able to do so, and we would like you to do so because then that also allows us to kind of see how many regular users we have. We get a view into who you are to some degree, and it also unlocks for you some features that I think you'll be interested in. So this is the My Account page, and you're looking at My Account, like literally what I have here, my display name, stuff like that, the ability to change. But at the bottom, here's some interesting bits, okay? The first one is allow communications from the site owner. If you check this box, and by the way, it is not checked by default when you first create an account, what that does is it actually allows us to see the email addresses of all of you that have created accounts. And so that means that we would have the ability to reach out to you directly from your email account, whether that be a newsletter or something along those lines. The second check mark there is about text correction. Text correction is one of the things that we can do with this website, but it is not enabled at the moment. We have some issues that we need to work through before we turn that on, but it is possible with this software to potentially allow people to correct the OCR on newspaper pages. It's a cool feature, but like I said, it's not available yet. So other things that are on this My Account tab that's really interesting and I think worth talking about is the recent activity. Right now, you have to rely on your browser's history to be able to go back and look at things and to see what's available. Okay, so this allows you to then store your history. So if you're logged in, you can click on this checkmark box and it will start to store your history, what you searched for, and you'll see the searches that I just did this morning, but it will also do what you've looked at recently. So anything that you've looked at recently will be stored to this list. It only stores a certain amount. I think it's maybe 10 in each of these. But that allows you to then reuse a search. So if you're using a search and you come back to it time and time and time again, you'll see that search in this list and you can go back. Or if you got a really interesting result and then you moved on and you're like, I wonder what that result was, you can always come back to this recently searched and recently viewed list. One of the things I think I've been kind of, let's say, skirting around is this idea of add to private list. Now, we saw that when you were looking at a page before, there were two options that were at the bottom of that. There was a download a PDF and an add to private list. Downloading of the PDFs now requires that you have an account in order to download the PDF of the page. This is done for spam protection, for scraping protection. One of the things that we discovered years ago with the old site is that bots, especially from China, loved to download our PDFs and store them someplace. And so in an effort to control that, we put Cloudflare in place, and there used to be an elaborate procedure you'd have to go through to download a PDF. Now, if you are logged in, you can download PDFs without any issue, without any further checks, because you have an account, you're a registered user. So we hate to restrict the PDF download to behind the user accounts, but it's really safest for us, safest for the content, and safer for our partners as well to have that content be controlled to some degree. The private list, however, is the part that I think you're going to be excited about. Last tab up here is private lists. So what this allows you to do is to create a page of results that you have saved. So when you find something that's really cool and you want to save it, so that way you can come back to it again, what you've always had to do before was bookmark it using your browser. Now you can save it to a particular private list, and you can create as many private lists as your heart desires. So what that means is if you're doing a research on a particular person, you can create a list for that person and then add the results that you have found to it. And here's the really cool feature about this, is you can add notes to that particular result. So here's the result. I have my page 3 of the Fort Covington Sun from 1986. I can jump out and look at that result, which is going to be this page. It's interesting. Normally it would give you a highlight of where it is on the page. So there's the page link, but you also have the ability to go over here and add a note to that page. So you can actually leave yourself notes about why that thing was interesting, why you wanted to look at it closer. So for instance, I'm going to scroll down. Some of these are kind of fun results. Again, I'm an egomaniac, which is why this is titled Chuck Egomania. If we scroll on down here, All-State Chorus, cast of the play. Ooh, Charles the Great. You'll get a kick out of this one. So this is Charles the Great. And I scroll in, and here's where I am dressed as a magician from a talent show when I was in 6th grade. But that was an eat from my list, and it was stored here, and I put Charles the Great in the note. Now, this is really cool, because then you can take kind of notes about each of the things that you are seeing. One of the cool features about this up here at the top is this email button. You can click email, and it will send it to the email you have registered. And when you receive that email, you're going to get the textual list of that. Let's see if I can throw it in the tab here so you can have a look. And here it is right here, list Chuck Egomania from the newspapers. And now you have a nice formatted list of links, and you can forward this email to anybody you like. So if you have a person that you're doing research with, you can share those results with them. And so you get this wonderful little layout. So it's pretty neat. I think people will be excited to see this. This is a set of features that we've never had, but always wanted to do. So I'm going to flop back to the newspaper site for a little bit. And so you can create as many lists as you want from here. And you'll notice you have the ability to change which list these things go to. So if you've add it to the wrong list, you can move it to a different list. You want to split a list into multiple lists, you can do that from here. This is a new feature I think people will be super excited about being able to use and store results. So I've covered, and I realize I'm moving super fast through these things.
Yeah.
Are there some questions, Lydia, that we can dig into?
Yeah, I've got a number. Can you search for images?
Search for images, meaning that,
If I want to be able, well, they can't hear me talk right now.
well, they can, because I'm talking in a minute.
Yeah, so some of the questions was, can you now search for images? And I think the answer is no, because it's built on an OCR platform,
Correct.
so we can search for text, but
Correct.
if there's a caption or description of it, this is where I just always want to say, maybe talk to your local librarian to help you come up with some search terms if you're
Yes.
looking for specific images. Another question is, will the old URL redirect to the new site?
Absolutely, yes. And I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier. So yes, right now we're using a temporary URL, and you're absolutely welcome to go and visit the temporary URL. But when we swap over, when we switch over, when we launch officially, the old URL that was there that you've always used will be where this is located moving forward. That does mean that the old site will disappear at that point as well, but we feel that this is a more than adequate replacement for the old site. So yes, the old URL will work when we launch officially.
That's wonderful. Does the page include citation information? Like the list that you can email yourself, I saw that and was like, oh, I should probably be able to like send that to my Zotero and have it. That's a whole nother thing, but yeah, does it create citations?
Yeah, it doesn't have citations per se itself.
Yeah,
and it's not a capability that it has. However, I think having the URL, you'd have to find whatever your favorite citation format would be, and plug that URL in.
And historic newspapers wouldn't always follow the formatting standards that we use now.
Right, that's true.
Okay, so another question, I think this is also a boolean related thing that's going to be under the search operators help section, but is there a way to search for a whole word, like if you wanted to just search for Ford and you didn't want to see Waterford?
Specifically I can't answer that, but I have a feeling that if we look under the advanced syntax, we might be able to find that specifically. I wonder if you can put it in quotes.
Yeah, I think you could probably do that with like putting a space before Ford and then putting it in quotes or something like that.
These results seem to be pretty Ford specific. Ford Escort, Ford Taurus.
Who funded this amazing project?
Actually, that's an interesting question. Actually, in a lot of ways, it's funded by the folks that have contributed material. We run an in-house digitization program. So what that means is that libraries, museums, organizations in general, if they have microfilm that have a particular title that they're interested in, we can digitize that for a cost. The cost is not very much. We try to be competitive with some of the larger vendors, but a portion of what you're paying for the digitization process is actually being funneled into the operation of the website. Also, part of the mission of the Northern New York Library Network and also the Empire State Library Network is to provide financial support for special projects, and amongst them is digitization projects as well. And so those organizations, ourselves and the rest of the Empire State Library Network, provide funding through grants in order to be able to do this. We also, here at the network, consider it part of our mission to provide access to information and resources for researchers. And so we contribute heavily to this as well.
Yeah, another question is, can contributing institutions send a subscription for their collection pages? I would say yes. This is the inside baseball question from one of our peers at another council.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that I have avoided ahead of the launch dealing with, I guess is the best way of putting it. There is a space, and some eagle-eyed people did notice as we went through it that if you look at a particular organization, there's a space for a description. At some point, I will be reaching out to contributors to have you provide a potential paragraph of information about your organization to put on this page. We have not engaged in it yet. I was more concerned in getting the site launched, but at some point, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have a description for every organization.
And then this is just a shout out to Tom Trininski.
Yeah, Trineski.
Trineski. Have you ever partnered with him and the Fulton History Search? Yeah.
No, we have not.
Sort of parallel.
We have tremendous respect here for Tom and what he's done. He's done an amazing amount of work to build his site. He has never reached out to us for partnership, and we've never reached out to him for partnership. There really isn't any plans to do so at the moment. I think our goals are a little bit different in what we're looking for on the site and for newspapers, but he is an excellent resource for newspapers in New York State as well. We're very, 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 very happy with what he's done as well.
Yeah. Somebody had a question about German language newspapers.
Yes.
Do we have any? I did a really quick search on Wikipedia and found a list of titles that are New York State publications in German language. So some of those might be in our collection. And if you're sitting on a foreign language collection, German or otherwise, and you'd like to digitize it, be in touch.
Yes. We do have foreign language newspapers, although not as many as I think that we would like. German, I believe we do. I want to say Syracuse, maybe not. I do know for a fact that we have Italian and Polish newspapers both. The Italian newspapers are typically from the Syracuse area. There are Polish newspapers from both Buffalo and the Rochester regions. We'd always love more, I guess, and we have a capability for it. We do also have one indigenous population newspaper from St. Lawrence County as well, although we'd love more. But there isn't necessarily like a language listing available on the site. Although that would be something to look into doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to take notes on that.
And then people just had some questions. Thank you, everybody joining us from places like Canada.
Woo.
And again, yeah, with the like indigenous newspaper and Akwesasne, like the borders are created by people, not by us. So anyways, a question was, do you have to be a New York State resident to access or set up an account?
Absolutely not. You can be a resident of the world, and we'd be happy that you create an account and use the website. This website, by the way, I think I said that when we talked about creating accounts, it's 100% optional. You do not have to create an account. We are not going to force you to do so. So if you want to use the website without creating an account, great. If you want to create an account and use all those cool new features, please do. And you don't have to be a resident of New York.
And I think this last question, because we're just at time, is probably answered by the extra questions under about or help, but it's about copyright. Do we, yeah, I don't know, just the people had a question about like copyright issues and I don't know, like if are any papers that we have like still in publication on here?
The answer to that is yes. We actually have several newspapers that are still in publication. So generally speaking, here's our take on this. Newspapers, we don't restrict the use of the content of this website out beyond, well, that isn't necessarily true. Let me put it this way. For educational and research uses, the site is available under free use. However, the limitations to that are if you are going to publish content from a newspaper, we can't give you use rights on it. You have to go and find who owns the rights to that newspaper and get permission from them. So if you were about to publish a book and you want to use content from our site, the images are fine to use. As far as we're concerned, we have no copyright or IP on the image that we have produced. However, you need to get permission from the copyright or IP holder of that particular title. Now, that does call into question public domain and fair use. So titles before 1923 typically fall under public domain. Public domain is a itchy, scratchy thing when you talk about newspapers. Ahead of 1923, you can probably get away with using it without too much argument. After 1923, we do advise that you reach out and find who owns the IP for that particular title. Between 1923 and 1967, there was a very elaborate and convoluted process for people to be able to renew their IP on a particular title. So it is possible that material between 1923 and 1967 is functionally public domain, but do not just use it. Go out and talk to the people involved. If you can't find the people yourselves, please feel free to reach out to us. Very often, well, not very often, all the time, we know where those pages came from, and we can refer to you to whomever it was that contributed that material to us in the first place, and you can go and talk to them in greater detail. We do have newspapers who are using us as their archives. Adirondack Daily Enterprise is a good example of that. They link directly from their website to us. And so very definitely anything in the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, go that route. So I realize that was a bit of a convoluted thing. Copyright and IP in the United States is a very complex topic, and I do not claim to be legally informed in any meaningful way, if that makes sense. Anything else we have on the list?
Just people had a link, a question about our YouTube link, which I'm putting in the chat. And you'll get over an email as well. So okay. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you get a sense for exactly how excited I am about this, that we are about this here in the office. This is a big step up for us. It is a way for us to move forward. It's a way for us to make sure that all of this great content gets out there and gets used and gets explored. So I can't wait to see what really cool and interesting things. If you come up with a neat project that you're doing using our stuff, please send us an email. Let us know. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Makes it so much more fun.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Keep reading them newspapers.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Oh, you're not supposed to see.